Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the masterclass of our guest of honor, Mr. Krzysztof Zanussi. Please welcome Mr. Zanussi. Mr. Zanussi received our Europe Award, so he is the ambassador of the European cinema. We founded this award 3 years ago, and our first recipient was Juliette Binoche. Last year, Magdalena Vásárjóval received this prize, and we are very proud that Mr. Zanussi also accepted our invitation and was able to receive this award personally.
Well, I feel very comfortable that I'm surrounded by two lovely ladies whom I happen to know personally, and I think it's a great honor to me to be put to this company.
Thank you very much. And we opened the festival with a brilliant film by Mr. Zanussi, The Year of the Quiet Sun. And now, after this conversation, we will screen another film by Mr. Zanussi. This is the Camouflage, Védőszínek in Hungarian. We call this program as a master class, but it's rather a Q&A, so we would like to talk informally about certain questions. And it's very important to say that it will be a really fragmental conversation within about 40-50 minutes, and of course at the end of the conversation you have the chance to ask Mr. Zanussi. First of all, you mentioned that you would like to screen the trailer of your brand new film, and you would like to introduce this very shortly.
Yes, I'm very tempted because I made my latest film in co-production with Hungary. It's the first time I was co-producing something with Hungary. It was co-produced also with Italy, Ukraine, Lithuania, and Poland. And I had a very good Hungarian actor in my film. So I have something special for you. After the trailer, which is like all trailers, just some scenes chosen by my distributor. But later on, I'll be happy to show you one scene with your Hungarian actor, Mr. László, who is still speaking in Hungarian. Later on, we have to dub him. So unfortunately, in original version, he will be speaking Polish. But we have fallen in love with his voice and his intonation. However, I think it would be very unfriendly. He plays a devil. Could devil speak Hungarian? I think it would be very unelegant to make such a suggestion. But this will come later. My latest film is called Ether, and strangely enough, it coincides with Hungarian film Sunset. To my greatest surprise, I recognized some interiors and even some pieces of furniture that I was using, and they were used in this film because my film also played in the same year, and it plays somewhere in Austro-Hungarian Empire. So the coincidences are always mysterious, and maybe if we have contact with the booth, we can see the trailer that will give you a little bit an idea what is the film, what kind of film I have made. Trailer is like 2 minutes, I think, or maybe 3. So let us go ahead.
Akkor kérnénk a trailert.
Wiedzieć będą dotyczyć pańskie badania.
Eteru. Eter to taka substancja, która wypełnia cały wszechświat, odbiera człowiekowi świadomość, a zatem i wolną wolę, a przy tym pozbawia go bólu.
Proszę, niech pan doktor pamięta, że po pierwsze ma pan tutaj leczyć, a dopiero potem prowadzić badania.
Oczywiście. Wierzysz, że dusza jest nieśmiertelna? Nie! W każdym z nas siedzi zwierzę.
A może pan doktor będzie pierwszy?
Ja mam szczęśliwą gwiazdę.
Jest pan pewien?
Tak.
All right, so this was a promise. It is not a film, it is just a promise. And the film should open in my country very soon. I hope we may have some light. And it will internationally open at Rome Film Festival in October. It is an official selection. So that's the introduction. But as you have seen, here you have in program 3 older films of mine, films I have shot in the past. I was introducing myself as a dinosaur because I'm very old, I'm almost 80. So I've shot many films, in fact, and I'm a lucky one because I shot almost all my films are author films, are films which I've written and which are expressing my real own point of view. They are not industrial. And this is really a blessing that I could make almost 40 feature films of that kind, which are most difficult to find financing. But I was a lucky one, not always, because when I applied to the film school in Łódź, everything went smoothly. There was almost 100 candidates for one place, and I was accepted. So I thought I must be very talented. But after 3 years, they kicked me out, saying that I'm hopeless. And that was a good lesson for the rest of my life to understand that judgment will always be relative. There will be a fluctuation, and I must have my own conviction, what I try to say and what I believe is important. So the rest of my life, there were moments of glory, and there were moments of heavy fight, because I think I disagree on many issues with many people, especially now, getting old. I am more and more angry, believing that the world is going in the wrong direction. It always went in the wrong direction, but actually there were some moments which were promising, and now it is again a total mess and confusion of the values. And I feel that this is wrong. I don't believe that there could exist any civilization that has no dream, no great expectations, and not a vision or an utopia that people will be ready to sacrifice something to achieve. We have achieved what our grandparents wanted: education, health service, relative security. All this has been achieved, but that's not enough. We must have a new vision, and we are not very advanced looking for it. So that's my private confession, why I feel I am very often in conflict with people, with politicians, with various parties. None of them satisfies me, but I'm not a politician anyway. And I think that you look like somebody who wants to ask a question.
Yeah,
so go
sure.
ahead.
Actually, I would like to ask you about your new film. So, what was the main inspiration source for this film, Eitari?
You know, it is the easiest thing to advertise own film just before the screening. I would say it is a combination of the myth of Faust that has been almost forgotten in Europe today, and it's only European myth. There is no similar myths, neither in India nor in China. I've never met any shadow of the myth of somebody who wants to extend his life, to be young again, and sells his soul. But my Faust, who is a non-believer, sells his soul and pretends to be Prometheus. And Prometheus was sacrificing his own comfort for the benefit of people. Faust does not. So he is a liar. And it's a story of science that tries to replace religion. And I'm a great enthusiast of science. I was a scientist myself. But I understand that science covers a different field and must not pretend to be only an exclusive instrument of cognition. There are other instruments which are also valid. And that's more or less what I would like that you find in my film, but that's very easy. to formulate it. I would have written my own review, very good one, but you have to do it yourself, and the film should appear in Hungarian distribution because it was co-produced by Hungary. So maybe let us now, to forget later on the film, see a fragment when your marvelous actor, László, appears, and still we will have English subtitles, and he still speaks Hungarian.
Úgyhogy akkor, ha kérhetnénk a film részletet.
We will be just in the middle of the story, so don't look any logic. There will be something ending the previous story. Yes.
Eventually.
Nossa! 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 Teraz! Teraz! Ой, вот, подойдем! Тарас! Чому Бог так робить, Тарас? Який в цьому сенс?
Кажи, чуєш? Все має сенс. Чуєш?
Jeżeli ksiądz stanie potrzebnie, ja nie wierzę.
És mi az, amiben a nagyságos úr nem hisz? Abban nem hisz, hogy holnap a kötélen fog lógni. Nagyon helyes. Mert lehet, hogy nem fog lógni.
I co wtedy? Co mnie czeka?
Miféle kívánságok van? Hm? És ha a cár megváltoztatja az ítéletet?
Na katorkę. Co warte jest takie życie?
A kényszermunkában meg lehet szökni, ha valaki segítséget nyújt. Olyan életet élhet, amilyet csak akar.
Niby dużo. Ale dla mnie za mało.
Mi lehet több az életnél?
Władza. Chcę mieć ludzi w posiadaniu.
Minden ember fölött.
choćby jednego. A co w zamian? Co dla pana?
Valamit, amit maga nem hisz. A lelket. Jó üzlet.
Kim pan właściwie jest?
Valaki, akinek a létezésében maga nem hisz. De maga nézetét, mi szerint én nem létezem, ma milliók osztják. Ez tulajdonképpen az én sikerem. Ugyan már, doktor úr.
Okay, that's what I wanted to show you. Thank you. So this is the only time when Hungarian public will see their actor speaking his own voice.
How did you find Joey Lannister?
Well, the casting director has shown me a couple of people. I didn't even know that he was so popular here, but
He's a very popular actor.
But when I've seen him acting, I realized that he's a very good actor. So that was an immediate reaction. He was my only candidate I wanted, and fortunately.
He even played in Master and Margarita on the stage.
Later on I knew about it, and he is born to play such roles. So he was very, I have to say it because that's the gossip column, that he was a very, very friendly colleague. We had very hard conditions of work, and sometimes he was really endlessly waiting. Like most great actors, he was not capricious. He had great sense of humor. And once he spent like 9 hours freezing to have one close-up without one single word. So he asked me, could I tell him what is he thinking when he is looking over camera? Does he need to have any special thought? Of course, I thought, think about Pythagoras, it will be visible on your face. But he was a very friendly person, and I'm very happy that I had this experience with him.
They say that what happened from 1914, so the First World War, is an Urkatastrophe, as some historians and artists say. So, what do you think? What happened then at the very beginning of the 20th century, and how is your film connected to this period of history?
Well, I don't want to leave critics jobless, because of course I can have my historical interpretation. I have the feeling that Europe has betrayed its ideals. Europe was formed as a unity of Christian countries that were defending Christianity, and successfully did it, and they were meant not to fight each other. And it is not by coincidence that among so many great civilizations of the history, only one, the European one, had provoked this incredible acceleration. Ancient Egypt was flourishing during 4,000 years, but was not progressing, was not growing in a visible way. The same China, the same India. And this civilization that was born from Roman Empire, Roman law, Greek philosophy, was inspired by Judeo-Christian thought that expressed certain faith in human being and certain concept of freedom. And this freedom was very inspiring. So economists like to talk that Europe was well situated, it was not too hot, not too warm, that there were proportion how many people and how what area was suitable for agriculture. All these elements coincided, but they think the most important element of Western civilization was this concept, anthropological concept of human being as God's child and not God's servant. Eastern Christianity was accentuating more that human being is God's slave, rab Boży, you would say in Old Russian. And Western civilization was saying we are children of God. And I think it had an important impact, you cannot prove it. But Europe was developing with great acceleration and, as often, has followed into the trap of pride. And First World War was the explosion of this trap. And it continues. Many people say that World War I is still on. The Second World War is just extension. And what is happening now is something also very disturbing. But I hope that Europe has resurrected many times, like Phoenix. So maybe it will resurrect once again. I'm full of expectations. However, I know this sad joke that somebody spoke to Phoenix and told him, listen, this time, no resurrection ever.
I remember once you said that Europe is very old and very weak.
It's weak, but still it is, to me, the best concept that humanity has created. Concept of collective life, philosophical concept. But we must, in my opinion, go beyond the illuministic, the vision of the world, because this is 19th century, we are in 21st century. And I know that science is proposing us totally different vision. We are not in Newton era anymore. So we have no space for determinism. Only humanists still think in terms of determinism. Look at psychologists, at sociologists. They will always tell you that you are who you are because you were conditioned this way. Where is freedom? And I think when we talk about contemporary vision of the world and of philosophy, we know we are still in a rational world. Nobody questions that universe is rational, is rationally created or conceived. But it is time of probabilism and probabilistic vision. And probabilistic vision leaves place or space for mystery. And mystery is the first step of religious sensitivity, of something what is metaphysical. So I hope there is a material for revival, but we must get rid of this, as I say, illuministic, this vision of the world, which is built like this Lego pieces that you put one to another. World is full of mystery. History is very mysterious, and no one single explanation is satisfactory. There is always a mystery why Napoleon lost Waterloo, and what would have happened at Borodino or at Moscovia if Napoleon won over Russians, how Europe would have changed, and so on and so on.
Yes, because we think backwards, so this is natural for us, because it happened.
Yes, but we know that time may move both directions. Only we are bound to move in one direction. Unfortunately, this direction for me is not very favorable, because it is towards the end, but end may be the beginning.
Absolutely. If we are speaking about development or progress, is this a positive expression for you in the European civilization, or is this sort of mixed?
Well, it depends what we mean, because definitely it is a great achievement that we have no hunger in Europe, very little, but not what we had at the time of Émile Zola and Charles Dickens. Children are not working in the mines, people are not starving on the street, and these are, we have access to learning, we have security, so there is no visible oppression. In Europe, we are promoting values and democracy, what means respect to other people and consensus and not violence. However, it is not enough. we must have bigger aspirations to see how we can be a leading continent in this century, and what offer we have for Asia and for Africa. What is our offer? What is our vision? How much we are ready to share, and we are not going to share everything, that's for sure. But we have to have a clear concept. What is the limit of our generosity and our human solidarity? And these problems are, to me, real problems. What politicians talk about, these problems seem to me totally irrelevant, futile. But maybe that's my arrogance, because I'm not in politics.
You travel a lot and you know Europe very well. I mean, almost each and every country is in Europe. So what do you think? What are still the main differences between, say, the Western and the Central or Eastern part of Europe 30 years after the fall of the communism? So 30 years is quite a long time. What do you think? What happened in the last 30 years and what is, if it has not happened?
Well, of course, we were expecting paradise on this earth when communism was over, and we were over-enthusiastic. In my country, we were also very proud that we had this change, and we were first to make this change without bloodshed. We were not shooting at each other, what was a great achievement of Solidarity movement. And Solidarity movement was very strongly Christian inspired. And that was the motive why it was so clearly said, we are not going to take revenge on communists. We are not going to kill, even if they were killing us. That was all 25 years ago. Since then, our living standards have grown. Many people became rich in our part of the world. But still we are not seeing, we were looking at more developed countries like France, Germany, Britain, hoping they will give us an example. And this example is not always that good. We have populistic movements. Italy is alarming, what is going on. If you have clowns elected to the parliament and they are close to majority, it is frightening. Populism is the greatest challenge to me and greatest danger, because it is side effect of democracy. But without democracy, you have no development, you have no growth. So we are in contradictions, and I see these contradictions. And we have eastern part of Europe, which is totally different, which is, in my opinion, as far as I understand, it is not developing very, very fast and very much. It is back to Christianity, but on a very superficial level. I don't see any real Christian revival in Russia. There are more Christians in France than in Russia. So, and France is known to be considered as such a lay country. So, we're in the middle of some major changes, and we may win or lose, because we see that China is growing, and China is ready to dominate the world. They are not against the domination, they would like it. And that would be sad, to become a third world called Europe. I like the idea that we are first world. And it's not combative, it is a concept like Olympic Games. I like to be a winner. So I don't want to lose this position.
In your film, The Year of the Quiet Sun, the last scene is, in my opinion, is really beautiful. We see the couple, and you wrote the script, you quoted in the script of this film Andrei Tarkovsky, that it is somehow a window to the eternity.
Yes, that's what Tarkovsky said, because we were both visiting Monument Valley in Colorado together on the way to the festival in Telluride, Colorado. And everybody was talking about Stagecoach of John Ford. And Tarkovsky, who was very radical, put down Americans, saying, it is such a sacrilege to shoot a Western, that means a film about money, stolen money, against such a metaphysical landscape. And as nobody knew what metaphysics means, he was explaining, this landscape is like an icon. so nobody knew what icon means. And then he said, look, icon is a window towards eternity. And when you look at Monument Valley, and it is not an advertising of new Mercedes, then it is eternity.
In your film Silent Touch, the main character has a Hungarian name.
Exactly.
He
Well,
is the-
he is, yes. It is, of course, a record of my great late friend, Zsolt Kezdikovacs, with whom we met in the 60s and remained friends up to his recent death. But it was also my desire to accentuate, I didn't want to be Polonocentric, and I thought it is something that will be equally actual for Hungary. This great artist in exile, like Marai, who was cut from his sources, and who were often as big or bigger than their Western contemporaries, but they were less known, and that's such a pity. So I invented this character. He was modeled after Karl Orff, who created his Carmina Burana in the 30s, and got totally forgotten when I met him in Köln Conservatory. I couldn't believe that he's still alive. He was teaching music, but he was, after the war, he was almost silent. It was many writers and many artists said art makes no sense after Shoah. Maybe that's partly true, but maybe not. We are phoenix, we have to resurrect again. And I wanted to make this homage to this particular link that Poles have to Hungarians. So at least I gave this name to him.
Case was played by Max von Sydow, the great Swedish actor. And
well, he badly wanted to say one line in Hungarian, but he was trying and it was not convincing. My coach said nobody will believe that he's an immigrant.
And the reason, for me especially, touching musical piece after this film by Wojciech Kilar. You cooperated with Wojciech Kilar in many films.
Not in many, in all.
In all.
Except the latest one, which has
exactly, because
background
unfortunately he died. So what was the cooperation process between you and Kilar? So how did you think on the cooperation in composing music? Or
Wojciech Kilar was almost my contemporary. He was 2 years senior. We had very bad beginning because he wrote music to my first feature film, and there was a total confusion because I had an idiotic idea, like many young directors, that I will make a revolution, and I wanted music not only to be composed but to be recorded before we shoot the film. I thought I was a genius. He told me he's not convinced, but he did it for me because I insisted. And of course this music was not good, and we had to do it again. And he has forgiven me this stupidity. So I thought a man who is able to forgive me such an idiocy will be my composer forever. And we work in all my films, no exception. We never spoke about music anymore, or about music of other composers, yes. You know, he was working for Francis Ford Coppola, the Dracula in Hollywood, for Jane Campion, for Polanski. Right, so I was extremely envious, or rather jealous, like an old wife. And I was making him remorses. How dare you write such a good music to my competitors? And he was answering, make such good films, I will make you such a good music. So in spite of this arrogance, our friendship survived. And he was a man of a great sense of humor, and this was our deal. We never called each other after 10 p.m., except if there was a new good joke. Then it could be midnight.
and happened it often, or
From time to time, yes, the world was producing situations that were funny.
you cooperated also in many films, 13 if I'm not mistaken, with Sławomir Ijek, the cinematographer.
Well, I'm rather faithful in my work, so when I have some good cooperation, I want to repeat it. You see the same actors in my films many times. In life, I've been only once married, which is absolutely exceptional and abnormal in my position as a film director. Nobody stays in one marriage. That's also something significant. So, with my cameraman, with my editors, I was trying to work as long as possible. Unfortunately, Ijak now made many Hollywood films and was very busy, and now he refuses even Hollywood films, saying, I met such idiots as directors that I don't want to do it again.
After this Q&A, we will screen the film Camouflage. And when I last saw this film a few weeks ago, I asked myself whether, if you would make this film today, would you make it?
I wouldn't.
That's it. So
that's a different
this
time, different
situation in this university circle. How is this today?
The corruption is universal, and I thought I made a very Polish film. And when I was traveling with Camouflage in America, they told me that two elements were alien to the public. One, the director is stealing food from the kitchen of the students. This was not realistic in America. And second, they said, cleaning swimming pool for rector will be possible, but not very, very probable. The rest, the playing up to the boss, is something universal. Corruption is unfortunately universal. It happens everywhere. And it's probably worse because I think the situation of universities today, all over the world, including America, is very, very bad. And I know that in the field of science, when I have all my friends, real development, real research is in big corporations. Universities are becoming sclerotic and are paralyzed by authorities that don't allow fresh thoughts. There was Niels Bohr, a great Danish physicist, who gave this dramatic answer to the question, how possible that there is some progress in science? He said, it is possible not because somebody has changed his mind, but because one generation dies out and the new one has different opinions. Unfortunately, this is now very true. So, very difficult to have any innovative thought at the university. Bureaucracy is ready to kill it. And we see the results, amount of totally irrelevant works that are printed, that bring points, university gets points, so gets money, and fresh mind is totally silenced. I'm very sorry about it. I am a university professor, and I suffer about it. And getting older now, I think I can afford to create a scandal because they have to send me to the retirement anyway. So I'm preparing a couple of lectures, after which I will be kicked out. That's for sure.
As you mentioned, you are a university professor, so what do you think, what is the difference between the today students and the students for about 20 years? Is there some significant difference, or either similar?
Well, depends what you want to point out, because of course there are very big differences. Today all my students sit with their phones and control what I've said, so I have to warn them that all data may be wrong. I'm sclerotic, I may have confused the dates, they control it. But I think today students are exposed to far more difficult world because it is multipolar and it's very difficult to decide whom to trust, whom not to trust. And this is dramatic. We had very few choices. There was usually believed that maybe there is one choice that is good. All other choices, like in Camouflage, were bad choices. So we were often feeling that we are in cul-de-sac. Today it is opposite. All choices may be good, but you have to choose the best one. And you don't know, is it an Erasmus scholarship, or is it staying at home, or is it going to the province, or is it going to Singapore? Everything is within the reach, but you must know really what you want, and often people are not ready, and that's why they suffer a lot.
So if you have questions, then please.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mr. Zanussi,
Oh, great, you did you do it in English.
I'm really curious about why you are so pessimistic about science replacing religion, because don't you think, as a former student of physics, science can, in addition to the mystery emerging out of the probability that you mentioned today, so in addition to that, it can also give us a sense of awe, and sense of belonging, and just looking at the stars, for example, it can show us and to know how many stars in the sky there are exactly, and how far they are exactly. So it can give us the same sense of littleness as religion. So
Yes, but I don't think it can replace, but I think there is no collision between exact science today and religion. They cover slightly different area, but there is no necessary collision. I think humanist science today is very much in the time of Newton, in the time of determinism. That's what Mr. Freud was telling us about our dreams. We know we may doubt about the significance of psychoanalysis today, but I can say it because I'm not at the university. At the university I will be crucified for saying that there is a doubt, because hundreds of people are earning money giving you psychological advices based on a theory that is not really very grounded. It's one of the concepts, but go with psychoanalysis, with Freud to Africa, you will see it is totally irrelevant. It makes no sense. World War II has taught us also that Freud was useless. So it is one of these fragmentaric wisdoms which help, but which are not complete. And I'm talking about mostly humanistic science and about this 19th century vision of scientism. Scientism was a concept. Engels was like that. He believed that everything can be explained in purely rational terms. And there are other instruments of cognition which are not necessarily rational. Intuition has been underrated, and as you know, in science, intuition plays an enormous role, and most great inventions were just due to intuition, were just like dreams, and scientists talk about it like poets.
also I have a second question.
Yes, please go.
It's just a shorter one. Don't worry. So what is your favorite film this year so far at the CineFest festival?
Well, I'm not supposed to explain. I have seen less than half of the program. Program is very overloaded. So I have one or two which I probably liked more, but none that I will be absolutely overwhelmed. The latest film that really has shaken me was Martin Scorsese, The Silence. This was the latest film that I will keep in mind till the end of my memory. But otherwise, from time to time there is something nice, something sympathetic, but nothing that will make me really shaken. But it's normal. Masterpieces happen once in a while, not every year.
Thank you so much.
Yes, please.
Mr. Zanussi, I'm curious about one thing, just about your ideas for the films. Where do you get them? Your pool, your whole pool of ideas, and from the many ideas, how do you decide that just this idea or that idea is the best for a film?
Well, the second part of the question is incorrect, because sometimes and very often it is not me. These are financiers and they decide, they say, this idea we will finance and this other one not. And I'm very unhappy. I put another idea to the shelf and I do another one. But of course I must believe in what I'm doing. I'm not going to offer you the film that I'm not interested in. And where come the ideas? You know, fortunately I have a very active life. And my film professors, years back, they taught me, take notes every day, because every day something interesting happens. It's enough just to watch and to see, and immediately you have a vision of the future script. So I'm like, now as I'm old, and I know I may maybe make another 3 films, 4 films will be a lot. I don't think I will be I will expect such a longevity like my colleague Manuel de Oliveira, who was shooting his latest film when he was 104. This is rather unlikely. So I have plenty of ideas that on my script writing seminars I'm happily sharing with people, and I mention it because it happened to me that I told a story that somebody told me, stories from Georgia in Caucasus. The diplomat told me this story. I told it at the seminar for scriptwriters in Italy, and a year later somebody calls me and says, can I use this idea because it is very suitable for me? I said, of course, take it. To my greatest surprise, I got a contract and I got paid. And I see my name in the credits. It was this year in Locarno. Un nemico che ti vuole bene is the title of the film, The Enemy Who Likes You a Lot. And it's exactly my story, this story, but it's not mine. It is the professor from Georgia. I don't remember his name now. I should inform him that his story has been transformed from Georgia to Calabria or to Apulia, and it works. And it was one of the stories I knew I will never use myself. It is not my style, but the story was excellent. I can tell you in 3 words if you have time. This is just because I think that I have seen the film in Locarno. It is a good film. And the principle was, professor went to his country house for a weekend. On the way back to Tbilisi, to the capital, he stopped on the way because he had seen a body. The man was alive but without consciousness, so he took the man and put him to his car. Bumpy road, the man has awoken, taken his pistol and says, where do you bring me? He said, to the hospital. The man said, you don't dare to bring me to the hospital, and fainted. So the wise professor knew that in Georgia you don't make jokes. If somebody says no, it means no. He brought him home. He put him in some hut he had in his little garden in Tbilisi, where normally dog was residing. And next morning he put some water, but he didn't want even to see. He was thinking, if he finds dead body, what to do? Should he dig his grave in his garden or bring him in the outskirts of the city or to the place where he collected him? But fortunately, at the evening, the hut was empty. This man disappeared. So professor burned the mattress and said, I'm free. A couple of weeks later, this man, already in good health, presents himself and says, Professor, you saved my life. So professor says, yes, I'm happy I did it. He says, what can I do for you? Well, what do you want to do? That everybody would have done. No, I have to repay my debt. So what is your profession? What is my profession? I'm a professional killer. Whom should I kill for you? He says, life for life. So the professor was laughing, and he was saying, it's not a laughing matter. If you don't indicate, I will find out. I know who you are. You are at a diplomatic academy. Check well, did the rector was fair with you all the time? Think about the neighbor at the communist times. Didn't he denounce you? What about your mother-in-law? Was she nice to you all the time? And you know, in the Italian film, it's exactly the same situation. And as the professor is unable to point out, the killer is going behind him. He's a very elegant man. And all these professors and all these people he meets are such pigs that you would like him to kill them all. What is a good premise for an intelligent film? So that's the full answer for your very kind question.
Thank you. Maybe one last question? If not, then thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for inviting me. I feel very happy.
We will screen Camouflage right after this Q&A, so please be with us. Thank you very much.
So I will have to tell you that from Camouflage there are some censorship did some cuts, but not very painful. I'm not going to complain. Normally, spectator wouldn't even notice that some things were cut, but censorship and the power was really furious on me. They hated this film badly, and no good reviews were allowed, so I got no reviews. I have no one single review in Poland from this film from that time. And, well, there were many complications because one of the actresses in the film, the older actress, became an activist in the anti-communist movement. So they wanted me to cut her from the film. I couldn't do it for all reasons, but you know, in that time, you were always negotiating with the power because power was stronger than me. So I saying, well, I may trim her, so make less, but not cut her totally. And then I thought I would cut one line. She reads poetry, so it doesn't matter. And at the end, my Minister of Culture said, well, could you promise me that there will be no portrait of her? So I understood he means close-up. There is no close-up of her. So I said, all right, I will cut all the close-up. There will be no close-up left. Oh, he said, you're a reasonable man. We can really talk. So what will remain? I said, well, a couple of medium shots. He said, what is medium shot? So I had to design it. And he said, oh, you are going to cheat me. This is a portrait. I said, no, it is with hands. No, it is a portrait. Mona Lisa is with hands, and this is a portrait. But I didn't cut medium shots. I left them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.